finally, if we'll move on to the slide that has CAC2 values, I want to briefly summarize them. I don't see them coming up. Yay, wonderful. Thank you. Here's the agenda for today, a quick peek. CAC2 values. So this is where we start every meeting and every webinar with a reminder of our shared values. At the top of the list, we put the children and their families first in everything we do. We are supportive of each other's efforts, take ownership of commitments we make within the collaborative. We are good stewards of resources and action-oriented in our aim to give voice to the childhood cancer community. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce our speaker, Danielle Leach. Danielle currently serves as the co-chair of the Alliance for Childhood Cancer, as well as on the Pediatric Hematology and Oncology Family Advisory Board at Children's National Medical Center. She also trains residents and nurses in partnership with children to highlight the needs of families, especially at the end of life. She holds a Master's of Public Administration degree in Health Policy and Management from University. She is also on at St. Baldrick's, and I am losing out on the official title, but all things children's advocacy is Danielle at St. Baldrick's, where she brings over 20 years of experience in the health nonprofit industry. Her expertise really is in bringing groups together for action, connecting individuals to others and to coalitions. She is driven by her desire to create change for kids with cancer, so no other family has to hear there is nothing else they can do for your child. Pulling people together, as I think will be evidenced by her talk today, whether it's managing volunteers, running coalitions, or organizing events, is a critical skill that Danielle graces us and our community. So welcome, Danielle.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the CAC2 for allowing me to talk about Action Days and our successes in advocacy. Let's see. We're gonna. Slides are going. There we are. So we wanted to talk about momentum a little bit, and I think it's a good time to pause for a moment and really talk about how we've come together and how we've worked together in the last several years to create change in advocacy and in policy, and the successes that we have had. Sometimes we don't take a lot of, we know that there's a lot more work to be done, of course, but we do have to talk about and celebrate progress. So about 3 years ago, we had a policy roundtable, and the Alliance for Childhood Cancer, the Coalition Against Childhood Cancer, worked together, as well as other individuals from the community that got together and had a series of meetings around policy and trying to get a sense of where we could collaborate, where did we, what were our goals, and we spent about half a year working on those things and having discussions and listening and coalescing around that. And we came up with three priorities: maximizing discovery through research, accelerating development and availability of promising treatments, and maximizing delivery of care, support, and quality of life for patients and families. So the STAR Act actually was born out of that process. And we took a lot of older pieces of legislation, things that had been worked on, and put it into one piece of legislation. Carolyn Price Walker, the survivorship bill, those things are all part of the STAR Act. We also had, obviously the success last year of race, and, the FDA is currently working out a process on how to implement race, and there is actually going to be a representative in June at the FDA, at the CAC2 meeting, for you to explain some more about how they've been working on that process. But actually several members of CAC2, as well as members of the Alliance, will be at a meeting this Friday as well to talk about what that process is going to be looking like and making sure that the patient voice is part of the process. We also had, the DoD appropriations for the Department of Defense Cancer Research Program. There was an increase in monies, and the category of children, adolescents, and young adults included in the larger pot of money that is there, and several CAC2 members, Brain Tumor Society, as well as Raleigh Foundation and several others have worked really hard for that inclusion, and they're still at goal of a separate program, but they did work on making sure that there was an increase in that inclusion was there. As many of you may know, the appropriations increase. We've had the largest increase for NIH and NCI in this last round of the budget. But we've also seen that more money is being spent at NCI on pediatric cancer-specific research. Pediatric Matches got it started. The RFA for provocative questions happened. We are seeing an incremental increase. We always want more, but we are seeing that advocacy is working, and that the collaboration that we are doing is making a difference. So one of the ways that individuals and organizations can come together and work on things is the Alliance for Childhood Cancer Action Days. And this year it is on April 23rd and 24th. Right now we have 227 advocates coming next week from 34 states. And we have a pretty good representation. I think the West Coast, we could use a little more people there. So we wanted to let people know that the last day to register is today, this evening on California time. We do have a hotel that is available still, and some rooms available. So if you are able to make it next week, we would really love to have you. We also want to learn about your legislators. There's things that you can do to take action. So register for Action Days, learn about your legislators. We'll talk a little bit about our asks, how you can think national and act local if you cannot make it to Action Days, and the faces of childhood cancer. There is still time, like I said, to register. The last day is today. We do have rooms available, and the registration information is on the Alliance website. One thing that we really recommend for people is to take time to learn about your legislators. Spend some time. You'd be surprised how many people have been impacted by cancer or childhood cancer that you didn't know, whether they have an interest in it. We just did this exercise with another advocacy group, and it was quite enlightening that what they discovered. Read their bios, follow their social media. And one thing we really want to focus on is red or blue, no matter your politics, everybody's there for gold and for kids with cancer, and much like the goals of CAC2 and others. So we're going to be focused right now, as many of you know, the STAR Act passed the Senate recently, and all of us have been working on it for the last 3 years. Everybody has been on Twitter, sending letters, taking action to get things done, and everybody has coalesced around pushing this forward. It is the most comprehensive childhood cancer bill ever introduced into Congress. We will be focused on the STAR Act and getting it passed and fully funded. The one thing that we want to be really clear with everybody is that this passage is one piece of the puzzle. We're going to be, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and we're going to have consistent push for the next 5 years in order to make this work. We'll also be focused on appropriations like we always are, making sure that NIH and NCI are fully funded. And even with this really significant increase that's happening, it's not in the rate of inflation, and we're still behind. So we need to continue to keep that pressure high. And as the pie gets the pie gets bigger, we're able to carve out more and create more opportunities within that pool of money. And like I said, our finalized ask may not be known until the night before because of Action Days, because things are moving on STAR Daily right now. If you haven't been familiar with the STAR Act, there is a one-pager to review on the Alliance website, and I also believe on the CAC2 website there's more information as well. And I think most people need to just put this in their lexicon as the most comprehensive childhood cancer bill ever introduced into Congress. As I said, it passed the Senate in March, and right now we have 85% of the House is on the bill, 364 members, 40% of the Freedom Caucus. I cannot stress to you enough how impressed people are when we walk in and say how many people we have on that. That is everybody's work. That is how everybody has been working together to make that happen. And that really has pushed the momentum and created a lot of pressure. And Action Days is actually coming around a very critical time. It's now sitting in the Energy and Commerce Committee. One would think with this much momentum and support, it'd be an easy fix, and just push it through committee and we're done. Well, with competing priorities, there's a little bit of lag, and they're kind of dragging their feet a little bit. And so the Action Days is really a great opportunity to put the pressure on to say, just get this done. So we want everybody to think national and act local. If you cannot come to Action Days, we want on April 24th, when everyone is on the Hill, to do digital advocacy. And many people within CAC2 and the Alliance are really good at this. And that's part of the reason why we've had so much noise around this issue. We'll share in the by Friday, the sample tweets, the hashtags, the call strips, and the Facebook posts to use on that day of action on April 24th. I cannot stress enough to you that your voice and participation at home is critical to the success at Action Days. We need to have that pressure coming from everywhere, not just from people on the Hill. And to take and use photos. One of the things that we've really found with the new algorithms in social media, that pictures and live videos and all of that digital media tends to get more action, more likes, more shares, and we see more activity around that. And especially it tends to come up on feeds and has more impact when we reach out to legislators. And again, a lot of great people have been doing a lot of work on that. Another way that you can get involved, and for those of you who have been to Action Days, you've seen this exercise. We have this project called Faces of Childhood Cancer, and that's my son Mason that you see on the screen. We produce these and ask people to produce a 8.5 by 11 sheet about their child with where they live, where they're from, and who they were, not just about their cancer, but also who they were as a child, who this child is or was, and really give your child is more than a statistic, and we want those legislative offices to really understand that these are kids in their district that have been impacted by it. So we put these in the folders that we leave behind at the meetings or the drop-off. So if you send these in, and this year we're excited because we've created an online form to make it easier and to share with your networks to have people fill out. And as on Friday, I would say the deadline is Friday afternoon, if you can encourage people to create these, the Faces of Childhood Cancer opportunity for us to share your child on Capitol Hill. It's another way that you can be involved while you're not, while you're not physically here in DC. It's very clear that you are here with us. So, I want to open it. I don't know if there's any questions, but it's pretty straightforward. I think there's lots of opportunities. There's lots of things happening on Capitol Hill right now. And I think, again, this was an opportunity to emphasize that the collaboration that we have pulled together in the last couple of years actually has moved the needle. We have gotten things passed. We have moved the needle forward. We've gotten more money for kids with cancer. We're seeing real partnership with NCI and commitment from them that has never been happening before. And we're excited when STAR does pass, and I don't have, my desk is not wood, but I'll knock on wood anyway. But we have all assurances from Capitol Hill that it is going. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And this next Action Days is a real opportunity for us to put significant pressure on them to make the when happen now. Does anybody have any questions?
If people do, if they would please type them into their dashboard. Can you hear me, Danielle?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Maybe I'm going to give a moment for people to chime in, and if we can read some questions. So far, I don't think I see any coming up. Do you, Danielle? On my dash, I don't see any. We would read them.
No, I don't see any questions. It's pretty straightforward. I think, if people want to ask, sure, go ahead.
Hi, guys. This is Amy Weinstein, and I have a quick question for you. Danielle, you talked about on one of your slides taking action, and you said that the last day to register for the Step Up Act Alliance for Childhood Cancer Action Days was today. The first question I have is can you give us a link that we can actually put that into the control panel, and I can share that with all the webinar participants? But if you could say it out loud, that would be really helpful, so I can write it down. That's
it's a little bit, the link is a little bit convoluted just because it's not a direct, like, clean link. You know, I can try. Let me see. I can try and make sure that happens, but I can definitely share it after.
I can look it up and put it into the type message while you're answering other questions.
Sure.
Perfect. My second question is on your taking action slide. You said that learn about your legislators. Can you explain what you mean by that a little bit?
So I think a lot of people, we don't, you know who your legislators are, but I think it's always good, and, obviously their Twitter feed in this day and age is a good snapshot of what they're focused on or what they're sharing within their office. That gives you a good lens of kind of their social media profile. But I think it's also good, to spend some time, looking at their bios, look at what people say, see what kind of articles are, being written about them, because you may find that they are really passionate about, cancer in general, or a different type of cancer, or their health LA is, they may be working on a specific issue in health that could be correlated to, the issues of pediatric cancer. Maybe they're really, interested in immunotherapy and research, or biospecimens, or they're very passionate about NCI and research, and they've been going to bat about it. I think, spending about 15 minutes learning what your legislator is, Google's a great friend in terms of doing that. But I think doing a bit of research also helps within your meetings to let them know that you've done your homework. And it has actually sparked a lot of good conversations and meetings when perhaps it's not only focused on your story, but there's more interchange.
Danielle, Joe McDonough asked a question through the system and says, do you expect the House to pass the exact same STAR Act, or will there need to be a reconciliation going back to the Senate?
Sure. They are trying to avoid at all costs a reconciliation situation, especially in an election year. That would probably be the worst thing that could happen, quite honestly. They are expected to adopt the exact same Senate version. That is our understanding, is that that is their desire. Their desire is not to change it. There is some, things about the authorization appropriations that everybody, gets a little bit caught up in on the Hill. And even though it passed through the Senate and we threaded that needle on the Senate, they always have to, there's a little bit of politics going on between the Help Committee and the Energy and Commerce Committee that has nothing to do with childhood cancer, that we're getting caught in a little bit. And that's why people coming to the Hill at this time saying, essentially knock it off, let's get it done, is a really important voice to have right now.
Danielle, I have a follow-up question. This is Vicki.
Sure.
So in terms of our community, I think I tend to agree from the information I have that the STAR Act will pass, and we hope sooner rather than later. But that is a cause for a moment of celebration, but following that, what can advocates expect to be asked to do to follow up once we get the news that it passes the House and the Senate and is signed into law, and our work is not done at that point, right?
Right. No, absolutely not done. I think and we've talked about this ourselves before, is that I think we're going to reconvene the roundtable to talk about how we can take pieces of how we can coalesce and work on particular pieces to ensure that there is quality implementation and pressure around, and create strategies for implementation to ensure that we're doing all we can as advocates to ensure that the implementation goes smoothly, has significant advocate voice involvement, and has full funding. I think that, the one mistake we made as a community many years ago is that, we didn't focus on the funding part of it. We did a lot of, we were happy to get it over the finish line, but we didn't work on the funding part. And in this environment, obviously it is a challenge for funding, even though despite recent budgets and everything else would make it seem that that's not the case. But it's interesting how that pushback is the first go-to. So we will really have to, I would expect if it passes this spring, either April, May, June, we would convene probably summer to really have an action plan and talk about it and figure out how we can partition the work that's going to be necessary in order to get it done, and also have a separate appropriation strategy specifically around STAR to ensure full funding. So we're, advocates that are interested in that from organizations that have, are within CAC2 or within the Alliance, or, we'll have to figure out a process in order for people to get involved with that. And then once we have that plan, find ways for individual advocates and for us with our individual networks, ways that we can activate people to implement the plan.
Danielle, this is Amy. I have another question, actually, just real quick.
Sure.
So 85% of the House is on the bill. Do we know? Obviously, ideally, we'd have 100%. Do we know where the other 15% is landing, and are there some targeted strategies that you all are working on?
Let's put it this way. There is no other bill in Congress that has this many members on as co-sponsors, almost none at this point in terms of co-sponsorship. The 15% that are left tend to be a part of the Freedom Caucus, who don't want any programs or expenditures, and have, even though we have 40% of the Freedom Caucus, that there are some that are just completely unresponsive, and we have basically exhausted every tool in the toolbox to reach these individual, these advocates. Most of them, I would say, and to be quite honest, they're not from targeted districts. They're not from places that we need them to move this bill. So it would be not the best use of our advocates' time to go after that last 15%. What I would say is, if your advocates are from Energy and Commerce, from the Energy and Commerce Committee, and we can share that list later. If you are a person that is in Kevin McCarthy's district leadership in the House, those individuals are, constituents are really important for them to reach out right now and to say, we need you to move this. We need you, and to put that pressure on. Strategy-wise, we are way past the tipping point in terms of co-sponsorship. Now it's really about targeted pressure on leadership.
Danielle, this is Joanne. Those of us listening, some of us are really well versed on this whole front of advocacy, and others less so. So I'm hoping this next question is something you can address. It's probably basic, but can you tell us a little bit more about the parts of the act that are at risk of change, and what the implications are, if there's one or two? If you're saying there's parts that, if it has to go back, it's because there's some changes that have been made. If it has to go back, there won't be. There
won't be any changes, substantive changes. The version that passed the Senate is the version that would probably pass the House. It is highly unlikely anything else is going to change substantively. The one thing from the original version that was passed in the last Congress that did change was the expanded access part of the bill was passed through 21st Century Cure, so that part got taken out. The GAO report didn't make it into this version that was in the last version. Those things, and the demonstration project funding is not, or the demonstration projects, the actual implementation of the demonstration projects was taken out because they felt that the $30 million wasn't going to, there was no way they could do all of what was in STAR and do the implementation projects. But that, again, that's part of the strategy. Is in appropriations, it's always good to show that you can use the money well and that you have success. So when we get success from what we've tried to implement in STAR when it's passed, and we use the money wisely, and we ensure that the money is being used wisely, and we see some success, it is always much easier to go back to them and say, see, we did it well. We got it going, we're showing it this, and then we can go fight for some more. So there's always, you know, to live another day. We can fight to live another day to get more money on the table to do more than what was taken out of the bill.
I have this is Amy again. Mm-hmm. We have a attendee who's got his hand raised. Neil Vork has a question. I'm going to try to open his mic. So let's see if this works, and hopefully he unmute Neil. Okay, Neil, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys great. And I'm guessing because I'm hearing my voice echo that everyone's hearing me as well. Just wanted to congratulate you guys on everything that you're doing. And on the Step Up map, there's a area where I can add descriptions or comments. So if someone is, for lack of a better term, creeping out their rep and finds interesting and informative information about their passions, they can send that information to me, and I can list it in the description section of their bio in the information bubble that pops up.
Neil, how do they reach out to you? Do you just want to just give them your email? Just say it out loud for us so it'll be recorded, and your email address, or how you want them to contact you?
All lowercase, NEAL.ROURKE@gmail.com. Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks. We also have another question. Thank you, Neil. I'm gonna put you back on mute. We also have another question from, from Sarah, and forgive me if I mispronounced your last name, Sarah Searley. She would like to know where the sample tweets, hashtag, Facebook posts, etc. will be shared.
Well, I will send to obviously, the Alliance for Childhood Cancer doesn't have its own Facebook page or Twitter page or anything like that. We will share those samples with Vicki and the CAC2 team, and they will put it on the appropriate places that are appropriate for CAC2 in order to share that. And I would also encourage you to look at the individual organizations that are within the Alliance. They will share it as well with their lists. So that's the way it works for the Alliance, is that the individual organizations share the information. But for you all, we will make sure that we send a full sheet, and you can share as needed and where it's appropriate.
So this is Vicki, and I will affirm that it will go out through email to the CAC2 email distribution list.
Terrific. Sarah, I think I see that's the last question I see listed. Anyone else? Danielle, anything else you wanted to comment on before I open it up for wondering if there's someone on the line to make a certain announcement? Otherwise, I will. Any other questions? There's a lot to take in and a lot to celebrate, but I think that part of the take-home message I'm getting is we probably would never rest on our laurels, right? Mm-hmm. We're always about the next fight, but it takes a lot to get us anywhere, and a lot of effort on part of folks like you. So thank you very much.
It's all about collaboration, and working together on common goals. And I think we're excited of how far we come, but we still have a long ways to go, and we're looking forward to working together to make that happen.
Well, thank you. We were advised at shortly before the webinar on an activity we do like to celebrate, speaking of collaboration, ways in which we do come together. And we were made aware of a posting on the clinicaltrials.gov site that shows collaborative funding of groups coming together to support a trial. And I'm wondering if Kim Buff from Momcology is online, because I would give her a chance to make this announcement. Kim, if you are, you can just chime in the chat box. Otherwise, I will not delay any further. And really, first of all, give people a heads up that we do like to reserve the last part of our webinars when there is a chance. A bit of a give-get if there's ways that you want to certainly showcase collaborative efforts and invite others to join. That would be great. This is an instance where we really want to feature a clinical trial that's on a particular drug, lorlatinib. It's a early phase trial, phase 1 trial in relapsed neuroblastoma, in which several of our members have come together to co-sponsor that. And it's a clinical trial, if you're familiar with that, a great way to identify any trial is by its NCT number, which is NCT 0310798. But in any case, it's a collaboration on phase 1 trial of lorlatinib combination and targeted agency. We know it takes a lot to get things in the clinic, so any way we can do to come alongside and help advance that as a group is worth a big applause. Thank you. I'm looking again for anything else that comes up in our chat line. I think we are ready to close out. So please, thank you again, Danielle, and to everyone for your interest and participation. If you please take a moment to complete a survey that will be coming your way in an inbox about the webinar, we'd greatly appreciate it. Your evaluation is very helpful for planning purposes. We're working on scheduling next month's webinar, so please be on the lookout for that announcement. And again, thank you. Enjoy the rest of this beautiful Wednesday. Thank you. Bye-bye.
This webinar was recorded, and as soon as it's processed, we'll make it available for you to go back over things, or for people who couldn't attend. Thanks.